All right. Yet another live Revenge of the Sith. It's a beautiful Sunday, and that means we're here to read Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. I've very much enjoyed the last few. It's good just to get the opportunity to reread Revenge of the Sith. Let me actually, you know what? I'll pull down Vader while I'm at it, but I can pull down my copy of Revenge of the Sith to more telegraph what's going on. How's it going, Jab? Welcome. Going to be reading chapter 4 and maybe chapter 5 of Revenge of the Sith today. I just flipped through it and I noticed chapter 4 is a little shorter than some of the others. Despite the fact that stuff's kicking off now, but I guess he's just separating things out a bit more. Let's see, how does that look? Yeah, nice. We got a little Vader display. But as always, we'll give a couple minutes for people to show up who may want to watch. Howdy, Z-Jack. Welcome. We're getting into, this is the death of Count Dooku, and then Grievous's escape from the Invisible Hand, I think, are our next two chapters. And I'm not certain if I'll do 4 and 5, but, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I love, this is one of my favorite chapters in the book. I think a lot of people really share around Dooku's death a lot as one of the best moments in Revenge of the Sith. The way that Stover gets inside his head as he realizes what's happened to him, and he realizes how fully he's been betrayed by Palpatine, is just great. Howdy, Karsten, welcome. I see a lot of fan edits using the treachery is the way of the Sith section at the end there. It's probably second to, that original opening with the two Jedi starfighters. Howdy, campaign, and howdy, welcome. We're always give a couple of minutes for people to show up. Anyone here read Revenge of the Sith before? Any fans? I've read it several times. I adore this book. I recommend it to everybody. Ooh, shoot, that reminds me. You know what? I completely forgot. I need to actually attach the Revenge of the Sith novel to this live, or else it'll complain about me. It's been a while since I did a live reading, and I forgot that this was a part of it. When I didn't have Revenge of the Sith pinned, my live kept getting flagged and taken down because they kept saying, well, you seem like you're advertising a product. And it's like, no, I'm reading a book. That's not the same thing. But they were like, no, you're advertising something, so you need to literally have it, pinned as an ad, or else we're going to remove you from the app. And it's like, all right, fine, I'll pin it. And I do encourage people to get it because I adore it. But that's really just there so that TikTok doesn't yell at me. Howdy, glues and all, welcome. But yeah, we'll start in probably just a couple of minutes. 10:10 is usually our 10:10 is usually our starting point for reading. I always give a little bit for people to show up, people to notice that we're live. But it's never a big crowd here either. Let's see, what type of lightsaber and what color would you wield? I would probably go with yellow, because I think it's a bit more niche. Yellow and green are my two favorite lightsaber colors, but I feel like green is, all over the place. Yellow is a bit more rare. As far as type, probably pretty boring. Just a regular single-bladed lightsaber. Specifically, I want, my favorite design of lightsaber are Luke and Obi-Wan's, where they've got the emitter that gets wider at the end. I think that's really cool. So that would be a key part of mine. But I don't want anything flashy, none of the whips, none of the double-bladed stuff. Just a regular classic lightsaber. Oh, hello, we got a kitty cat coming. Oh, she's gonna come up and make an appearance. Hi, welcome. What color lightsaber would you have, Calypso? Probably like magenta. She's a big Mara Jade fan. Oh, you're a good girl. You want to sit and read with me? Let's see how we doing. 10:07. All right, we'll give a couple more minutes. But yeah, I've never put too much thought into like the me in Star Wars question. Someone asked like what would my Jedi name be a while back, and I had nothing. I am a writer, so I write a lot of stuff in Star Wars, but I'm never a part of it. If I were in Star Wars, I would be very boring. I'm some guy living on a back world, just doing nothing. Oh, welcome, Paige. Thank you for the roses. Aw, shucks. I appreciate you're just in time. We're about to start our next chapter of Revenge of the Sith, if you'd like to stay. If not, as always, I upload these onto YouTube after. I watched the holiday special and retired from being a Jedi. I would be an even more powerful Jedi after the holiday special, filled with the light and joy of Life Day. The holiday special makes me stronger, but I haven't actually watched it this year. I still need to. I watch the holiday special once a year. Are the despecialized going to be released? So we just got announcement that they are coming back to theaters. I mean, the first one is, and I assume when we reach the 50th anniversary of the other two, they'll probably do them as well. But yeah, A New Hope, the original theatrical cut, is coming back to theaters in 2027, which is insane. That's so cool. Oh, let's see, Artie getting ready for a troop. Hope you have a great day. I hope you do too, Artie. Nice to see you. But yeah, I'm so excited to see A New Hope in theaters. I don't know that I've ever actually seen it on like the big screen before. Certainly not the theatrical cut. It's gonna be fantastic because that's really the only cut I try to watch these days. Is if I'm lazy, I'll put on the like Disney Plus version. But the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, this could be better. It won't be A New Hope, just Star Wars. Exactly. We're gonna see Star Wars the movie. Oh, Calypso, getting my cables. You can't do that. We're going to be Star Wars the movie in theaters again, which is insanely cool. I didn't think they'd do it. I figured the fact that they haven't for so long, I assumed that George had some sort of like contract stipulation about like what you can and can't release. Don't undo his work and all. But like, evidently not. Oh, thank you for the follow, Dylan. I appreciate it. And I hope you'll stick around as we can probably get started. It's 10:10 now. We can hop into chapter 4 of Matthew Stover's Revenge of the Sith. If this little baby is done getting scritchies. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I gotta read. All right. So this is chapter 4, Jedi Trap. This is the death of Count Dooku. A starburst of clarity blossoms within Anakin Skywalker's mind when he says to himself, "Oh, I get it now," and discovers that the fear within his heart can be a weapon too. It is that simple and that complex, and it is final. Dooku is dead already. The rest is mere detail. The play is still on. The comedy of lightsabers flashes and snaps and hisses. Dooku and Skywalker, a one-time only command performance for an audience of one. Jedi and Sith and Sith and Jedi, spinning, whirling, crashing together, slashing and chopping, parrying, binding, slipping and whipping and ripping the air around them with snarls of power. And all for nothing, because a nuclear flame has consumed Anakin Skywalker's Jedi restraint, and fear becomes fury without effort, and fury is a blade that makes his lightsaber into a toy. The play goes on, but the suspense is over. It has become mere pantomime, as intricate and as meaningless as the space-time curves that guide galactic clusters through a measureless cosmos. Dooku's decades of combat experience are irrelevant. His mastery of swordplay is useless. His vast wealth, his political influence, impeccable breeding, immaculate manners, exquisite taste, all the pursuits and points of pride to which he has devoted so much of his time and attention over the long, long years of his life, are now chains hung upon his spirit, bending his neck before the axe. Even his knowledge of the Force has become a joke. It is this knowledge that shows him his death, makes him handle it, turn it this way and that in his mind, examine it in detail like a black gemstone so cold it burns. Dooku's elegant farce has degenerated into pathetic melodrama, and not one shed tear will mark the passing of its hero. But for Anakin, in the fight there is only terror and rage. Only he stands between death and the two men he loves best in all the world, and he can no longer afford to hold anything back. That imaginary Dead Star dragon tries its best to freeze away his strength, to whisper to him that Dooku has beaten him before, that Dooku has all the power of the darkness, to remind him how Dooku took his hand, how Dooku could strike down even Obi-Wan himself seemingly without effort, and now Anakin is all alone and he will never be a match for any Lord of the Sith. But Palpatine's words, "Rage is your weapon," have given Anakin permission to unseal the shielding around his furnace heart, and all his fears and all his doubts shrivel in its flame. When Count Dooku flies at him, blade flashing, Watto's fist cracks out from Anakin's childhood to knock the Sith Lord tumbling back. When with all the power that the dark side can draw throughout the universe, Dooku hurls a jagged fragment of the Durasteel table, Shmi Skywalker's gentle murmur, "I knew you would come for me, Anakin," smashes it aside. His head has been filled with the smoke from his smothered heart for far too long. It has been the thunder that darkens his mind. On Argonar, on Jabim, in the Tusken camp on Tatooine, that smoke has clouded his mind, has blinded him and left him flailing in the dark, a mindless machine of slaughter. But here, now, within this ship, this microscopic cell of life in the infinite sterile desert of space, his firewalls have opened so that the terror and the rage are out there, in the fight instead of in his head, and Anakin's mind is clear as a crystal bell. In that pristine clarity, there is only one thing he must do. Decide. So he does. He decides to win. He decides that Dooku should lose the same hand he took. Decision is reality here. His blade moves simultaneously with his will, and blue vaporizes black Corellian nanosilk and disintegrates flesh and shears bone, and away falls a Sith Lord's lightsaber hand, trailing smoke that tastes of charred meat and burned hair. The hand falls, with a bar of scarlet blaze still extending from its spastic death grip, and Anakin's heart sings for the fall of that red blade. He reaches out, and the Force catches it for him. And then Anakin takes Dooku's other hand as well. Dooku crumbles to his knees, face blank, mouth slack, and his weapon whirs through the air to the victor's hand, and Anakin finds his vision of the future happening before his eyes, 2 blades at Count Dooku's throat. But here, now, the truth belies the dream. Both lightsabers are in his hand, and the one in his hand of flesh flares with the synthetic bloodshine of a Sith blade. Dooku, cringing, shrinking with dread, still finds some hope in his heart that he is wrong, that Palpatine has not betrayed him, that this has all been proceeding according to plan, until he hears, "Good, Anakin, good! I knew you could do it," and registers that this is Palpatine's voice, and feels within the darkest depths of all he is the approach of the words that are to come next. "Kill him," Palpatine says. "Kill him now." In Skywalker's eyes, he only sees flames. "Chancellor, please," he gasps, desperate and helpless, his aristocratic demeanor invisible, his courage only a bitter memory. He is reduced to begging for his life, as so many of his victims have. "Please, you promised me immunity. We had a deal. Help me!" And his begging gains him a share of mercy equal to that which he has dispensed. "A deal only if you released me," Palpatine replies, cold as intergalactic space. "Not if you used me as bait to kill my friends." And he knows then that this has all indeed been going to plan. Sidious's plan, not his own. This had been a Jedi trap indeed, but Jedi were not the quarry. They were the bait. "Anakin," Palpatine says quietly, "finish him." Years of Jedi training make Anakin hesitate. He looks down upon Dooku and sees not a Lord of the Sith, but a beaten, broken, cringing old man. "I shouldn't." But when Palpatine barks, "Do it! Now!" Anakin realizes that this isn't actually an order, that it is, in fact, Nothing more than what he's been waiting for his whole life. Permission. And Dooku... Let's see. I'm going to take a second. Got to refresh myself, get a sip of water before one of the best passages in this book. Y'all ready for this? As he looks up into the eyes of Anakin Skywalker for the final time, Count Dooku knows that he has been deceived, not just today, but for many, many years. That he has never been the true apprentice. That he has never been the heir to the power of the Sith. He has been only a tool. His whole life, all his victories, all his struggles, all his heritage, all his principles and his sacrifices, everything he's done, everything he owns, everything he's been, all his dreams and grand vision for the future empire and the army of the Sith have been only a pathetic sham, because all of them, all of him, add up only to this. He has existed only for this. This. To be the victim of Anakin Skywalker's first cold-blooded murder. First, but not, he knows, the last. Then, the blades crossed at his throat uncross like scissors. Snip. And all of him becomes nothing at all. It's so good. So good. Oh, let me take another. Trying to keep myself from getting too phlegmy. This sounds so much easier in the audiobooks when they're allowed to cut out all the water breaks. And I love, I don't want to read too many of the author's notes because I think, you should get the book and read them. They're fantastic. Everything Matthew Stover has to say about this is excellent. But this is a particularly good one where, all of that was in, present tense. He has existed only for this. And so then the next sentence is back to Anakin's perspective, and it's back in past tense, the regular tense that most books are written in. And Stover mentions that the return to past tense here is supposed to make it feel like time is starting to roll normally again, while your, Anakin's, brain is still melting over the horror of what you've done. It's like there's so much thought into every aspect of this book, Even just what tense to use when. That was great. It's so good, right? All right. Murderer and murdered each stared blindly, but only the murderer blinked. I did that. The severed head's stare was fixed on something beyond living sight. The desperate plea, frozen in place on its lips, echoed silence. The headless torso collapsed, with a slowly fading sigh from the cauterized gape of its trachea, folding forward at the waist as though making obeisance before the power that had ripped away its life. The murderer blinked again. Who am I? Was he the slave boy on a desert planet, valued for his astonishing gift with machines? Was he the legendary pod racer, the only human to survive that deadly sport? Was he the unruly, high-spirited, trouble-prone student of a great Jedi Master? The star pilot? The hero? The lover? The Jedi? Could he be all these things? Could he be any of them, and still have done what he has done? He was already discovering the answer at the same time that he finally realized that he needed to ask the question. The deck bucked as the cruiser absorbed a new barrage of torpedoes and turbolaser fire. Dooku's severed staring head bounced along the deck and rolled away, and Anakin woke up. What? He'd been having a dream. He'd been flying, and fighting again, and somehow in the dream, he could do whatever he wanted. In the dream, whatever he did was the right thing to do, simply because he wanted to do it. In the dream, there were no rules. There was only power. Missy. And the power was his. Now he stood over a headless corpse that he couldn't bear to see, but he couldn't make himself look away. And he knew it hadn't been a dream at all. That he'd really done this. The blades were still in his hands. Jeez. The blades were still in his hands, and the ocean of wrong he'd dived into had closed over his head. And he was drowning. The dead man's lightsaber tumbled from his loosening fingers. I couldn't stop myself. And before the words left his lips, he heard how hollow and obvious was the lie. You did well, Anakin. Palpatine's voice was warm as an arm around Anakin's shoulders. You did not only well, but right. He was too dangerous to leave alive. From the Chancellor, this sounded true, but when Anakin repeated it inside his head, he knew that Palpatine's truth would be one that he could never make himself believe. A tremor that began between his shoulder blades threatened to expand into a full case of the shakes. He was an unarmed prisoner. That now, that simple, unbearable fact, that was truth. Though it burned him like his own lightsaber, truth was something he could hang on to. And somehow it made him feel a little better, a little stronger. He tried another truth. Not that he couldn't have stopped himself, but... I shouldn't have done that, he said, and now his voice came out solid and simple and final. Now he could look down at the corpse at his feet. He could look at the severed head. He could see them for what they were. A crime. He'd become a war criminal. Guilt hit him like a fist. He felt it. A punch to his heart that smacked breath from his lungs and buckled his knees. It hung on his shoulders like a yoke of collapsium, an invisible weight beyond his mortal strength, crushing his life. There were no words in him for this. All he could say was, it was wrong. And that was the sum of it right there. It was wrong. Nonsense. Disarming him was nothing. He had powers beyond your imagination. Anakin shook his head. That doesn't matter. It's not the Jedi way. The ship shuddered again, and the lights went out. Have you never noticed that the Jedi way, Palpatine said, invisible now within the stark shadow of the general's chair, is not always the right way? Anakin looked toward the shadow. You don't understand. You're not a Jedi. You can't understand. Anakin, listen to me. How many lives have you just saved with this stroke of a lightsaber? Can you count them? But it wasn't wrong, Anakin. It may be not the Jedi way, but it was right. Perfectly natural. He took your hand, you wanted revenge, and your revenge was justice. Revenge is never just. It can't be. Don't be childish, Anakin. Revenge is the foundation of justice. Justice began with revenge, and revenge is still the only justice some beings can ever hope for. After all, this is hardly your first time, is it? Did Dooku deserve mercy more than did the Sand People who tortured your mother to death? That was different. In the Tusken camp, he had lost his mind. He had become a force of nature, indiscriminate, killing with no more thought or intention than a sand gale. The Tuskens had been killed, slaughtered, massacred, but that had been beyond his control, and now it seemed to him as if it had been done by someone else, like a story he had heard that had little to do with him at all. But Dooku had been murdered. By him. On purpose. Here in the general's quarters, he had looked into the eyes of a living being and coldly decided to end that life. He could have chosen the right way. He could have chosen the Jedi way. But instead, he stared down at Dooku's severed head. He could never unchoose this choice. He could never take it back. As Master Windu liked to say, there is no such thing as a second chance. And he wasn't even sure he wanted one. He couldn't let himself think about this. Just as he didn't let himself think about the dead on Tatooine. He put his hand to his eyes, trying to rub away the memory. You promised me we would never talk about that again. And we won't, just as we need never speak of what has happened here today. It was as though the shadow itself spoke kindly. I have always kept your secrets, have I not? Yes, of course, Chancellor, but... Anakin wanted to crawl away into a corner somewhere. He felt sure that if things would just stop for a while, an hour, a minute, he could pull himself together and find some way to keep moving forward. He had to keep moving forward. Moving forward was all he could do, especially when he couldn't stand to look back. The view wall behind the general's chair blossomed with looping ion spirals of inbound missiles. The shuddering of the ship built itself into a continuous quake, gathering magnitude with each hit. Let's see, I'm going to take another pause there. Howdy, Obi-Wan, welcome. Adamus, is this Star Trek? No, of course not. Star Wars. I love that bit, Anakin had to keep moving forward. It was all he could bear to do because he couldn't stand to look back. It's really a great sort of predecessor to Vader, where it's, I'm a new person now. I'm just looking forward. Anakin Skywalker is dead. That past doesn't apply to me anymore, I think that's great. Thank you, Glenn, for the follow. I'm glad to have you as we finish off our next chapter of Revenge of the Sith. Anakin, my restraints, please, the Shadow said. I'm afraid this ship is breaking up. I don't think we should be aboard when it does. In the Force, the field signatures of the magnetic locks on the Chancellor's shackles were as clear as text saying, "Unlock me like this." A simple twist of Anakin's mind popped them open. The Shadow grew a head, then shoulders, then underwent a sudden mitosis that left the General's chair standing behind and turned its other half into the Supreme Chancellor. Palpatine picked his way through the debris that littered the gloom-shrouded room, moving surprisingly quickly toward the stairs. Come along, Anakin. There is very little time. The view wall flared with white with the missile's impacts, and one of them must have damaged the gravity generators. The ship seemed to heel over, forcing Palpatine to clutch desperately at the banister and sending Anakin skidding down a floor that had suddenly become a 45-degree ramp. He rolled hard into a pile of rubble, shattered permacrete, hydrofoam to reduce weight. Obi-Wan! He sprang to his feet and waved away the debris that had buried the body of his friend. Obi-Wan lay entirely still, eyes closed, dust-caked blood matting his hair where his scalp had split. Bad as Obi-Wan looked, Anakin had stood over the bodies of too many friends on too many battlefields to be panicked by a little blood. One touch to Obi-Wan's throat confirmed the strength of his pulse, and that touch also let Anakin's force perception flow through the whole body of his friend. His breathing was strong and regular, and no bones were broken. This was a concussion, no more. Apparently, Obi-Wan's head was somewhat harder than the cruiser's interior walls. Leave him, Anakin, there is no time! Palpatine was half hanging from the banister, both arms wrapped around a stanchion. This whole spire may be about to break free. Then we'll all be adrift together. Anakin glanced up at the Supreme Chancellor, and for that instant, he didn't like the man at all. But then he reminded himself that, brave as Palpatine was, his was the courage of conviction. The man was no soldier. He had no way of truly comprehending what he was asking Anakin to do. His fate, he said in case Palpatine had not understood, will be the same as ours. Story time, it's only 10:30. That's when I always go live with the stories, as we start at 10 a.m. Oh, thank you, Bailey, for the follow. I'm glad to have you. But yeah, 10 on Sundays are our Revenge of the Sith days. Although, I mean, if anyone, has a better time or a time they'd prefer, I'm open to suggestions. I choose these times based on, what I feel like will work well, based on other lives, but seems like a bedtime kind of thing. That's not a bad point. It's tough finding, a uniform bedtime for everybody. I only recently learned that, I do my other lives at 7, but I have, regular viewers who show up all the time who it's midnight for them when I start. So it's ooh. But maybe I've been meaning to make a Discord, and I'll put out, a poll if, we'd prefer to move these to nighttime. Alright. But let's see, where were we at? True, it's definitely tough. Yeah, a lot of time zones. With Obi-Wan unconscious and Palpatine waiting above, with responsibility for the lives of his two closest friends squarely upon him, Anakin found that he had recovered his inner balance. Under pressure, in crisis, with no one to call upon for help, he could focus again. He had to. This was what he'd been born for. Saving people. The Force brought Obi-Wan's lightsaber to his hand, and he clipped it to his friend's belt, then hoisted the limp body over his shoulder and let the Force help him run lightly up the steeply canted floor to Palpatine's side. Impressive, Palpatine said, but then he cast a significant gaze up the staircase, which the vector of the artificial gravity had made into a vertical cliff. But what now? Before Anakin could answer, the erratic gravity swung like a pendulum, While they both clung to the railing, the room seemed to roll around them. All the broken chairs and table fragments and hunks of rubble slid toward the opposite side, and now instead of a cliff, the staircase had become merely a corrugated stretch of floor. People say, Anakin nodded toward the door to the turbolift lobby, when the Force closes a hatch, it opens a viewport. After you? And there we have it. That's chapter 4, and I think we will stop it there for today. I think that the next chapter is just a little bit too long. It's a short live today, to be sure, but I think we'll call that. How's it going, Drip Drip? Welcome. You've just missed our Revenge of the Sith reading, but we'll be back next Sunday with, maybe a different time. I really need to get on making that Discord. I'll probably do that as soon as I hop off and get a channel going so that I can notify people when I'm going live, so that I can do polls like this more easily with people who use my TikTok. I guess I could use, there's also like TikTok Spaces, but I don't know if those are any good. I don't love Discourse myself all that much either, but I know that it's at least popular. But yeah, that is our Revenge of the Sith reading for today. Thank you all for joining me for another chapter. Damn, is this book good, huh? I'll be back next Sunday with another chapter. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I hope you're excited for, we talked about briefly at the beginning, the New Hope re-release. That's going to be fantastic. But for now, have a wonderful rest of your days, and as always, may the Force be with you.